You're listening to Switched On Australia, the podcast that tracks the opportunities and challenges of electrifying everything, everywhere. Switched On is brought to you by the publishers of Renew Economy, Australia's best informed, most read website focusing on the green energy transition, and is supported by Boundless Earth. Boundless Earth uses philanthropy, investment and direct advocacy to help Australia become a global force in a decarbonised world. Hello and welcome to Switched On Australia, the podcast about the people, ideas and technologies powering our clean energy future. I'm Anne Delaney. Thanks for joining me. Right now, more than 1,000 new home batteries are being installed across Australia every day as part of the federal government's Cheaper Home Battery Scheme. It's a big win for clean energy, right? Well, not so fast. Dean Spaccavento is the co-founder and CEO of Reposit Power, and he says the federal government's Cheaper Home Batteries program is a colossal wasted opportunity. His frustration isn't with the ambition of the policy. He thinks it's excellent in its scope, but rather the way it's being designed and delivered. Millions of public funds are being poured into home batteries that Dean says won't actually help support the grid or accelerate the clean energy transition. For the last decade, Dean Spaccavento has tried to make the distributed energy that households and businesses install punch at weight with centralised and utility energy. He reckons these resources can be as significant as the big centralised resources. And the Australian Energy Market Operator and federal government are counting on being able to harness all our consumer energy resources, or enough of it, to play a key role in stabilising the grid by 2050. But Dean says the regulators, government and industry have to do much better if that's going to happen. I started my discussion with Dean Spaccavento by asking him to give me his bird's eye overview of how Australia is going harnessing consumer energy resources like batteries and solar to support grid power.
So I have been doing this for 10 or 15 years now, and it has been, it's a slog. It is a difficult thing to try and change the electricity system, let alone try to completely disrupt the electricity system. And so much of the culture of the industry and the regulation is about big generators connected to transmission lines that then distribute energy in one direction to consumers. And just the concept of not doing that and maybe having a more distributed system where every connection is bidirectional and there's a lot of them really is a cultural disruption, a technical disruption. And there are people that want to participate and don't know how. There are people who are really very skeptical. There are people who absolutely see it as a threat. So, it does really feel like pushing very heavy things uphill. It has for a long time. Despite that, we've made pretty good progress. Like there's a bunch of electricity services where they were 100% delivered by centralized resources, and now a good chunk of them is delivered by distributed resources. So we've had wins, pretty heavy ones, and now it's about scaling that, and that is going to be the next 5 years, I think.
Yes, and we'll unpack some of that in this interview. But I just for a little bit want to focus on the issue of batteries, because obviously batteries are a very crucial form of distributed energy resource. The Cheaper Home Battery Scheme is going gangbusters. We're installing over 1,000 batteries a day now. But you've actually been critical of the scheme because it only requires home owners to install what they call VPP-ready batteries, not to join a VPP. Tell me why you think it should be mandatory to join a VPP, a virtual power plant.
I actually don't think it should be mandatory to join a virtual power plant. I'll take a step back on that question. I think the scheme is excellent in terms of its scope, its ambition, its recognition that batteries are the Swiss Army knives. They are the missing link, and the ones that are connected at homes and small businesses are also expected to be part of the solution. I am critical of the must be able to participate in a VPP criteria that has been applied by the subsidy and the administrators of it. It doesn't mean anything. everybody can say that any battery that they install is able to participate in a VPP. And what that is doing is allowing people to install things that will never, ever be able to participate in a VPP and gain the full subsidy. So there's $17,000, $18,000 of subsidy on offer at the moment, with plenty of people taking that up in its full value. And the 4%, I reckon, no more than 4%, 5% of those batteries will ever participate in a VPP based upon data we've seen from the ACCC, data we've seen from the New South Wales peak demand reduction scheme. And I think that's just a wasted opportunity. I think we're at probably 1.2, maybe 1.3 gigawatt hours of home batteries installed in the last 3 months, and 4%, 40 or 50 megawatt hours of that will actually contribute to the transition of our grid from a coal-fired, gas-fired one to one based upon solar and batteries. I think we need to do better.
So what specific obligations or standards do you think should be attached to these sorts of battery subsidies?
I think that a battery installed under a subsidy, under the cheaper home battery subsidy, should be obligated to have a performance check conducted remotely via the CCIP-OZ protocol. We can get into the details about what that is. It's a protocol that has now been adopted federally and has all of the abilities required to do a quarterly check of the performance standard of that battery each quarter. It's automated. It would cost nothing for the homeowner. It would have no impact on their bill. But if you fail those, it means the battery is not fit for purpose for delivering grid services and is not able to participate in a VPP. Just want to do the performance check, just to make sure it's able to participate in a VPP. At the moment, it's been installed. No one knows if it's able to participate in a VPP. Maybe it is when it's first installed and then something breaks. No one's looking. The majority of these batteries are being installed by solar installers and then, not really looked at again, except by the homeowner, who then, what are they going to do if something's broken? They're not
Wonder what's
battery.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's an obligation where $17,000 or $18,000 of public money is being spent, that these devices actually do remain able to participate in a VPP, and not just in imaginary land, checked quarterly, even monthly. I mean, it's an automated thing. And that's what I think should happen.
And we have the technology to do that now.
Yeah, so there's a thing called CCIP-OZ. It is the Common Standard Inverter Protocol, Australia. It's based on an international standard called 2030.5. And it's been adopted in Victoria, and it's also been implemented in Victoria. It's gone to Western Australia, and it will go into New South Wales, the ACT, and I think Queensland in April in 2026. It was supposed to be implemented very soon, but they've pushed the date back in those states. We have the standards. It has been adopted federally. We have a lot of infrastructure around it. Yeah, there's lots of momentum. It is supported by the government. It's been around for a long time. This is not technology we don't have.
So why do you think that those performance protocols aren't obligated, or that they weren't made part of the cheaper home battery subsidy scheme?
I don't think people in the regulatory space understand the nature of distributed energy assets and the way they get installed, how they work, the pieces that must work together. And I think they assume things that are not true. And I think they have a limited understanding of the consumer reality of what a subsidy scheme like this does. And we're living in it now. I also think they're not familiar with, it is a very, very deep bit of technology, the CCIP-OZ thing. I think they're not familiar with it, or they don't understand it. And, CCIP is being talked about as a means of using, as a means of backstop, which is a technical action to be taken by the Australian Energy Market Operator if we have too much solar in the system and it's causing a risk of blackouts. But the protocol itself is not just able to do that. The protocol itself is quite rich. But no one's talked about using the protocol for performance monitoring. And so that's why I talk about it. It's absolutely capable and we should be doing it.
I mean, you talk about performance protocols. What about just generally minimum standards for these batteries that are coming in under the subsidy scheme? Do we need to do better there?
It really just depends. There's a balancing act. It depends on what you mean by those minimum standards. There are minimum standards, right? The inverters must be 4777. CEC goes and puts them on the list and they check some stuff. I think that part of the issue that the system has, the distributed energy ecosystem in general, is that it's poorly regulated. I think that the regulatory environment, again, because of the cultural shift and paradigm disruption that I talked about at the beginning, I think the regulators are not up to speed with what they need to be doing here. And they, are quite sort of bamboozled by the whole thing. 2 years ago, the Australian Energy Regulator and the Australian Energy Markets Commission kind of did a consumer energy kind of regulation review, and everyone threw their hands up in the air and said, not us, not us. And the networks basically said, well, it's the network's job to regulate CER resources because they're the ones who do 4777. It's not really even the networks do that. It's the CEC, and the CEC just puts them on a list. So it's unregulated. We have a generally unregulated system, and there are lots of side effects of that. All of them bad for the consumer.
Yeah. I just want to pivot just a little bit and just look at the issue of how we're going with getting people to join virtual power plants and what the retail industry is doing to attract them. What's your views about how well the industry is going in attracting customers to join these schemes?
I don't think that anybody is doing a particularly good job at this at the moment in any kind of sustainable way. It's a complicated space already for a consumer. I think I counted you, there's 14 brand decisions that a consumer has to make when they're thinking about solar and batteries. That's just too many. And each of those brand decisions is I guess, a degree of freedom. Which solar panels, which battery, which inverter, which retailer, do I have to get my meter updated? And then on top of that, there's this question of, and which virtual power plant operator should I join? And all of these things are already pretty opaque, very technical. And then on top, you've got this decision to be made about which VPP operator. And consumers are at best overwhelmed by that. But actually what I think they're doing more often than not is saying this feels like a scam.
Yeah.
And we hear that a lot. We hear it a lot. And one of the number one questions that gets put over onto the sales lines at Reposit is, how is this possible? All VPPs are a scam. Why is your one not a scam? The fact that the language goes to scam immediately when speaking to VPPs is an indicator of a trust issue.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's not just us. It thinks everybody sort of gets this question. And you can see it, right? 4% of people who have a battery are getting into VPPs. That's quite low.
Yeah. And that lack of trust has built over years, hasn't it? The lack of trust in the energy industry overall, because consumers haven't felt like they have got what they need, or they felt ripped off, or their electricity prices just keep rising. So that distrust, it has been there for quite a while.
I agree. Electricity I think the industry has failed consumers since about 2011. It's a long time now. We're talking 14 years or so, where things were promised and the opposite was delivered. And then another thing was promised and the opposite was delivered. And people see their bills and they're opaque and they don't understand them. And they figure, okay, I'm being bamboozled here. And then everything just gets more complicated. And then you've got demand charges turning up. It is a pretty rough environment for a consumer. I can't really think of anything that is as rough on a consumer as the electricity system. It changes so quickly. And beyond that, electricity is a grudge purchase. It's a tax. People don't buy electricity. They want their aircon to work and they want their car to go and whatever, right? They don't see it. There's no good feelings associated with, turning the power point on. It's the good feelings come from the air conditioner when it blows nice cool air. It's it's a unique challenge, electricity, in terms of a consumer product. And I think that there's, some significant rethinking to be done, but also I think the trust issue needs help. And I think we come back to the cheaper home batteries program. I think there's an ability for the government to find a way to try and break the trust barrier and get people trying these VPPs in higher volumes. And then I think there's a way for the governments to regulate VPPs in a way that makes consumers feel that they've got some protections and they've got someone on their side.
So you reckon it fundamentally comes back to what the government does, as opposed to what the industry does, or the government forcing the industry into doing certain things?
I think that consumers believe that electricity is a government concern, and that they feel abandoned by the government. And that is why electricity prices are such a hot button political topic, because the consumers feel that it's a government thing and the governments have set up these mechanisms and these mechanisms are failing me. And they don't go and shout at Origin and AGL. They go and shout at the federal government. And I think that that's just a reality of it. I think that the deregulation of the electricity system was fundamentally good, and I think it should continue. But I don't think the government can be super hands-off with this thing that they get blamed for. And the cheaper home batteries subsidy is sort of like a recognition, or at least an action that the government has taken that says, yeah, we know we've got something to do with this thing. Likewise, the bill credits that were put on before that. I think the governments need to be more active in this space, and they are under Minister Bowen. The activity, particularly in consumer energy resources, particularly in this term, is massively increased. It's overwhelming.
Can I just unpack some of the comments that you are getting at Reposit about virtual power plants and the harnessing of consumer resources? I'm presuming that the main critique is, one, you've got the scam, as you've pointed out, but it's this losing a degree of control over their energy assets. What else are people saying to your salespeople?
So Reposit is a little bit different and actually unique with the definition of unique being there's only one, in that we guarantee no electricity bill, no matter what. Price goes up, you use too much electricity, your system stops working, whatever, we guarantee you don't see electricity bill. Literally, it's real. You don't get a bill. And we guarantee it for 7 years. That is the third product evolution for Reposit, and it is a response to the previous two product evolutions. People don't like the VPP thing because they say, I bought this battery, this is my battery, and I don't want to share it with somebody who's going to make a bunch of money out of it. You're not helping me.
Yeah, especially in industry that you're already distrustful of. Yes.
Correct. So what we did is recognize that and said, okay, well, we will offer something that is obviously good. Guarantee of no electricity bills. You don't see a bill. And people are like, well, I'm interested in this. You've caught my attention, but I don't believe you, because all of this VPP stuff is a scam. And so there's a catch here. There's some kind of catch. What's the catch? And so actually most of our sales process is trying to answer people's questions about where the catch is. And the fact that so much of it is that is a testament to they want the product.
Yeah.
But also they have very little trust in anybody making any kind of promises or guarantees in the electricity system.
So you're offering no bill for 7 years. How did you get to that stage? Because as you mentioned, you have had different offerings in the past. How did you get to the no bill offer which seems almost too good to be true.
Yeah. So we started off with a system, a controller bolt-on that you could buy through at one point 430 solar installers, and it would control the battery to deliver a bunch of like advanced services. So pre-charging your battery at night from off-peak during winter, so that your battery is actually useful during winter, as opposed to not being fully charged because there's not enough solar, and delivering weather forecasting stuff and all sorts of different, an app. And that was kind of the first evolution of it, and people kind of liked it. It was much better than the simple fill up the battery as much as you can from whatever solar is left over after the house has consumed it, and then discharge it at night. Just a step up from that. The second thing we added was a thing called grid credits. And grid credits was a $1 a kilowatt hour feed-in tariff for any time we use your battery. And that was powered, I guess, financially via access to the wholesale market, access to some of the AMO reliability services, access to distribution network augmentation replacements. So that is using the battery to manage the network. And what we found, and that's very similar to, in fact, most of the VPPs that are sort of available today. And what we found is that consumers were ultra confused by when their battery would do a thing. They would say, well, why is it charging now? Well, you'd have to have the conversation. It's charging now because we expect it to discharge later. And they're like, but you're costing me money. It's charging and it shouldn't be. This is peak times. I'm like, yes, but you're going to get money later. And they're like, stop it charging. Like, what are you doing? Right. And you see that now in like sort of the most common VPPs. You look through their social media, Reddit channels or subreddits and their Facebook groups, et cetera, you can see consumers responding in exactly the same way. Again, the trust is low, and the electricity system in Australia in particular, and the NEM, is quite twitchy. It's a 5-minute settling market. It gives you all sorts of predictions, and sometimes those predictions don't come true. And most VPP operators leave the consumer holding the bag. So they'll get the VPP fleet ready to do a thing, and then all the prices will disappear, or the RERT event won't get called, or the distribution network won't call your support or whatever. But you've still like loaded the consumer's bill up with a sub-economic charging phase.
Yeah.
Or now, because of minimal system load, you'll empty the batteries, and then you won't get the high prices that come later, or the negative prices that come later. And all of this, when you're operating in a background of like, I don't trust you guys, it's all a scam. As soon as you do that once or twice, the cost to serve for the consumer is so high. And you see that like the sort of bigger VPP operators who have to sort of swim in that pond, have to have all these sort of guarantees that are essentially customer retention payments. Because where there's a lack of trust or a lack of performance, which is sometimes their fault and sometimes not, all you can do to keep your customer base is to pay them out. And that's what's happening. So, I mean, it makes VPPs not very attractive commercially, where you've got to pay out to keep your customer base. So what we did is said, listen, here's the grand bargain. You buy the gear, it's your gear. Finance it however you want, pay it with cash, whatever, your gear. We can never take it from you. And if you give us control of it, while we're in control of it, we will guarantee you no electricity bills. We will get all the upside, and we will take all the downsides from the system not working, our mistakes, the market not doing what it was supposed to do, etc. But you are guaranteed no electricity bill. We'll make that commitment to you for 7 years. You can leave whenever you want. No penalties, keep your equipment, it's not our equipment, etc., etc. And we found that the cost to serve of that product is much, much lower. The customer satisfaction is much, much higher.
It's much lower. It's much lower for you.
Yeah, much lower.
Yeah, right.
Because what we found was that Reposit is based upon a very, very complicated piece of maths that is about co-optimizing multiple electricity services from a single battery. And what that means is we make the battery earn money from multiple different things all at the same time. That makes the battery's behavior erratic if you're not a computer or a co-optimizing electricity trader who can do it in their head. which there's very few people that could do that. But if you're a customer, you look at what the battery's doing and you're like, what is happening? This is crazy. And then they start making phone calls and causing all sorts of I guess, customer dissatisfaction
Yeah,
issues that
yeah.
ultimately result in cost. But under no bill, we say, listen, you're not getting a bill. So don't worry about any of this stuff. We will do what we want within the bounds of your system's warranty. And if it works, then that's great. And if it doesn't work, it's fine for you and bad for us. But we can turn on all the trickery. And so we do. Our no-bill systems dance a lot harder than your standard wholesale only exposed only system, or your standard system that's only doing FCAS, or your standard system that's only delivering against, your vertically integrated retailers' capacity. We dance much harder, and we can do that now because
Because of the
we don't
technology.
because of the technology, and also because we have the consumer license to do so.
Yes.
Because they're not left holding the bag if it all goes wrong.
And also, though, they're going to be guaranteed that, their electric vehicle is charged when they want it to be
Yes.
charged, and the battery will be full when it's going to be, when they need it, etc. I presume that. I mean, that's the guarantees you've got to give as well.
The guarantees, so we charge, do you want to plug your car in and charge your car? Do it whenever you want, no problems, right? That's fine. People with 2 electric cars, still fine. We size your system accordingly. If you fully electric and have lots of cars and a big house and whatever. But yeah, you just don't see an electricity bill. Electricity bills are not a thing for our customers anymore. They don't think about them.
And so
When there's
no
an
network
article,
charges?
nothing, zero.
Nothing.
You don't get a bill. Literally, Anne, a bill does not appear at your house. It does not appear in your email.
Mm.
There is no bill for you. That's why it's called no bill.
Yes. And why some people think it's a scam.
Yeah, because it's a massive disruption, right?
Yes.
You grew up with your parents yelling at you to turn off the lights because the bills are going to be really high. And then you moved out of home and you had to pay electricity bills and you're like, oh my God. And for your entire life, you've had to pay electricity bills. And then this company turns up and says, listen, how about you don't do that anymore? And it works for us and it will work for you. It's a very large disruption. And it's another one of these promises that someone in the electricity system is making. And you're like, I've seen promises like this before. And it never worked out for me, not since 2011.
So tell me, how is that plan going for you as a business?
It's actually, I am surprised at where it's hard and where it's easy. It sells as fast as we can throw salespeople at it. The difficulty actually that we have is in finding salespeople who can articulate the product and handle the questions in the right way with full integrity without getting carried away, because typical solar salespeople are not good at it. They revert to the standard sort of tricks of selling solar, which I think it's an industry that really struggles for integrity, and I think a lot of people feel that. And so the most difficult part of it is in finding the right salespeople who I'm willing to have talk to customers or potential customers, to the point where we have actually now put in a policy where we explicitly do not hire solar salespeople as
Right.
salespeople anymore.
Right.
Yeah, we'll take anybody else and train them from scratch.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had too many false starts, lots and lots of false starts with solar people. And it's interesting that a business that is essentially co-optimization and aggregate control of distributed energy resources, actually a lot of our resources go into training salespeople.
Yeah, right. So with your scheme, people, they're not actually bringing their own battery because you want them to buy certain batteries, don't you? And
Yeah.
solar. It's so that they're limited in what they can put on, but they have to pay for it. So there's still a quite considerable upfront cost to actually join the no-bill scheme.
Yeah, so at the moment, you have to buy the solar and the battery system from us. And we do that for 2 reasons. The first reason is we need to size the system appropriately to be able to make the guarantee. And the second reason is that the quality of the installations that we have seen over the last 10, 15 years is very poor. And where we're making the guarantee, where it's us making the guarantee based upon the performance of a solar and battery system, we need that performance to be pretty good and to be quite reliable. And over thousands and thousands of systems that we've seen, the performance is not good. And it again comes down to this lack of regulation. It comes down to the nature of the industry. And it comes down to another reason why the capacity being installed now under the subsidy is unlikely to be able to participate in a VPP, because even if it has the communications interfaces or whatever, the metering is probably not installed correctly, or the solar is probably not extreme, it's not very reliable, or one of many, many things. It would be a joy for me to be able to expect that a solar and battery system that has been installed by somebody else that is of appropriate size could be used for Reposit no bill.
Yeah,
But it can't. The
right.
quality is not there. And Reposit no bill isn't magic. We just have performance expectations of the gear that we've got control of, just like anybody else who's running a virtual power plant.
Yeah.
And as a result, a lot of this capacity will never participate in a virtual power plant. It will just cost too much to remediate the system.
What you're painting a picture of here, Dean, is a real lost opportunity, and also a fail in terms of what AEMO is hoping is going to be produced from our rooftops, from our garages, etc. I mean, they're counting on all of this distributed energy for the future, aren't they?
Yeah, and it comes back to my original sort of commentary in that the regulatory environment, the system environment, the electricity policy environment, the engineering environment does not understand distributed energy resources. Thinks it's you slap a battery down, you pull some wiring through and bing, bang, boom. Hey, look at all those megawatts we could get under control. And it's absolutely not like that. And, all of these themes continue to be interwoven. The poor regulatory environment and the incentives that are placed and the nature of the solar industry all contribute to, I do think, a colossal wasted opportunity. And I don't think it's like a wasted opportunity that couldn't be like seized and made an actual opportunity. I just think we're not doing it. And it's like we haven't learned from solar.
Yeah, right. What other regulations and system changes do you think are going to be necessary in the next few years to be harnessing distributed resources?
I think that there needs to be a way for distributed energy resources to deliver electricity services to the distribution network. At the moment, there is a monopoly play by the distribution network operators on who can deliver services to their network. The distribution network operators, get to decide with complete and 100% a jurisdiction as to who gets to provide those services. And most interestingly, Ausgrid has now validated via their their sandbox trial submission, that in fact they would like to use batteries and solar to provide network services to their network, which is which I applaud. Absolutely. To the fact that they've recognized that batteries behind the meter can do that is great.
Yeah.
My question is, why would we entrench the monopoly? Why would we not let anybody with solar and batteries provide those network services? Like, if anything, the network
Right.
has got no experience in doing this. Plenty of others have got years of experience in doing this. So I actually think that the regulated asset base that is made available to networks for delivering services to their network should be made available to third parties.
Yeah, right. Because that's the main critique of that Ausgrid trial, which seems like an innovative idea to me, but the concern is increasing monopoly power, isn't it?
And for no reason. Like, there's an opportunity here. That is, the network, Ausgrid, has stated publicly that solar and batteries can deliver their network services as a substitute for poles and wires. Amazing. Then the next step is but where should be the only ones to deliver those services? We're going to do that. We're going to use it. We're going to socialize the costs. But that's not the next step. The logical next step is that's great. There is now an alternative source. Let's make it competitive. Let's drive efficiency. But that's not what the AER seems to want to do at the moment. The AER it has not just said, well, that's great. Now let's open up the markets. Instead, what it says is maybe there's $180 million in it for you to do this. It makes no sense. We have competition entering this market, knocking on the door. 1.3 gigawatt hours of storage installed in the last 3 months. Why are we not making that able to compete with the networks?
And if that market was opened more, do you think that we could move faster, in terms of the transition?
I do. I actually think that one of the trust-destroying aspects of VPPs is when a promise that you're going to get some money gets made and then the money doesn't turn up, right? I think that's the fundamental thing. You see it with all of the major VPP operators. And it happened with Reposit as well before we moved to no bill, and just destroys trust. The thing about a regulated asset base is that you get paid for being there. Now, you have to deliver, but the payment is secure provided you're doing your job. It's not like they can promise you something and then it doesn't appear. And the networks have that. Right? It provides the stability for them to deliver stable networks. But that should be afforded to VPP operators as well. For delivery of the same service, we should be able to get paid on the same terms as the networks.
I've just got a few more final questions. I mean, I could keep talking to you for ages, Dean. You've said in the past that you can see a time when energy will be free for everyone. Do you still think that's possible?
Yes, I do. I actually think, so my vision for Australia is that electricity is free for all households, and that we have such an abundance of electricity that particular energy intensive industries make their home in Australia. And that surplus is used not only to grow our economy and to create future jobs that are actually going to be like high value, but also it relieves people of having to think about where their energy comes from, and how much of it they're using, or can I get off gas, or can I electrify this device or that device. I absolutely believe that we have enough capacity in the system, enough roof space, and enough sunshine, and the supply chain and the labor force for Australia to generate so much electricity that it is free for our consumers, very cheap for our businesses, and ushers in Australia's ability to host high energy demand industries of the future.
Now, if Australia gets this wrong, if we have badly designed virtual power plants and we don't build the trust of consumers, etc., what's at risk? What will it mean for the energy transition?
I think that electricity prices will continue to go up. And I think that we will miss out on those future industries. AI is the obvious one that, people in the tech world that I spend a lot of time with do talk about. And I believe it as well. I think AI, hosting data centers for AI in Australia is going to be really important, generally for the globe. And I think we have all of the advantages to do it. We just need to choose to do it. I also think that we are going to be well into adaptation in terms of climate change, and that is going to mean lots of air conditioning and maybe desalination. And if we don't have the ability to sort of bend the world a bit using very clean energy, I think our standard of living is going to fall very badly. I think we're going to need to be able to use energy to manage living conditions for everyone, including and especially people of less means, as the environment gets both hotter but also more volatile with more damage. I think we have no choice but to be able to have abundant amounts of very clean energy at our disposal.
And that is, we are going to rely on scaling VPPs in a way that's fair for both consumers and good for the grid, I presume.
We're going to have to use every lever we have available to us, both distributed and centralised, to get this done in time. The Minister Bowen, is right. We have to do all of the things all at the same time. We don't have the time to try one thing and that doesn't work and then try the next thing. And that means that distributed energy resources are going to have to pull 50% of the weight at least. And we have the ability to do that. We know that we can scale the install now. That's been proven out. We know we have the technology. That's been proven out. We know they can deliver electricity services. That's been proven out. We now need to work out how to earn consumers' trust so that they're willing to host a grid interactive distributed energy resource rather than sort of like hiding it behind their electricity meter.
Dean Spaccavento, thank you so much for joining the Switched On podcast today.
Thanks, Anne. It's been a pleasure.
And Dean Spaccavento is the co-founder and CEO of Reposit Power. It'll be interesting to see whether the energy regulators will be able to address some of the problems that Dean has identified. You've been listening to Switched On Australia, brought to you by Renew Economy and Boundless Energy. I'm Anne Delaney. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.